Now that I have a drawing set up, I want to draw the line work that I need to convey my design. In this case, I'm going to assume that I'm going to use the aerial image as my background or reference information and draw polylines that represent the crosswalk. Later on, I'll trace over the image in case I need a 2D line work instead of the image. The first thing we want to do is make sure that we put the line work on an appropriate level or layer. We can do that from the Home tab and the Layers panel, and you'll see a drop-down that has all of the layers in the drawing. So I'm going to scroll down and pick a layer that's appropriate. And I'm going to call it C Road Dash Line. But you can pick any layer that you find appropriate. Try not to pick def points or zero. Zero because it's a generic layer that really doesn't convey information to someone who's using this drawing in the future. That might be yourself. And then def points doesn't print. It's a layer used for dimension styles and other stuff that you don't want to print. So now that I've set the layer, I can then draw a polyline. And the reason why I'm using a polyline is because I can set the width as I draw it. So if I have a 12-inch stripe, I can set my width to be 1 feet to get that same width. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the polyline button on the draw panel. You can also type PL and press enter at the command line. It's going to ask me at the command line to pick a starting point. As you use Civil 3D and you're waiting for something to happen, make sure that you read the command line to see what the program's asking you to do. And so I'm going to pick a starting point. Once I do that, there's some options at the command line. They start with capital letters, either at the beginning or somewhere within it. And these are shortcuts to set what value you want to use. In this case, I want to do width. I can either type W and press enter at the command line, or I can click on width. Either way will work. So I'm going to put a 1 foot stripe. So I'm going to type 12-inch stripe. So I'm going to press 1 because that's 1 foot. At the end, it's also going to be 1 foot. And now I've got a polyline that has the width of the stripe. At the command line, it's asking me for a next point, and I'm going to go ahead and select the next point. Let's say you didn't want it to be 12 inches. It really needed to be 10 inches. In that case, you'd want to modify the properties of the polyline. You can do that by selecting the polyline and opening up the Autocad Properties button or palette. You can do that by typing Control-1, which will bring it up. You can type PROP at the command line, which will bring up Properties, and that'll open up the Properties palette. And you can also hit the Properties button on the Home tab. At the top is basic information about the line work, such as its color, layer, line type scale, plot style, transparency, hyperlink, and thickness. There's a 3D visualization that really isn't applicable for the line work we're drawing, and then the geometry. I can change the start segment width and the end segment width, or I can change the entire global width. So let's say I want it to be 10-inch stripe. So I can type 10 and divide it by 12, and then that's going to automatically do the math for me and apply the 10-inch stripe. You can also change the layer located on the AutoCAD properties if you want to choose a different layer. So I've got my first stripe, and then I want to place another one. I could draw another polyline, but I want it to be parallel to my original one. So I'm going to use what's called the offset command. The shortcut to the command is typing O at the command line and pressing enter. If you want to press a button, you can find that on the Modify panel on the ribbon, and use the offset command. Once again, it's reading the command line for the next thing to do. So it's going to ask me for the offset distance. I'm going to make my crosswalk 8 feet wide. So I'll type 8 for 8 feet. And then it's going to ask me for the object to offset. So I'm going to select my polyline. And then it's going to ask me for the side to offset it to. And I'm going to offset it to the right. And so that gives me 2 polylines. I notice that it doesn't go all the way to the end of my curb and gutter here, so I may want to extend it. To do that, I can select the polyline, and that'll bring up some grips. And I can use the grips to stretch or add a vertex. In this case, I might want to stretch it. As I do, I want it to extend along the line. So I'd want to use what are called object snaps. And object snaps allow me to use geometry that's in the drawing to modify either line work or the line work in my drawing. To turn on object snaps, I can do that from the status bar at the bottom of the program. And object snaps are the rectangle with a little icon in the upper left-hand corner of it. I can either select them from the list, or I can hit Object Snap Settings to get a dialog box where I can check and uncheck the object snaps that I want enabled. In this case, I want endpoint and extension. Extension will allow me to extend along a line, a polyline, or an arc, or a line. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to turn it on. I can tell it's not on because it's doesn't have that slightly blue outline. So now when I click on it, I can see the light blue icon is there. And so that means it's on. So then I can click on the grip to make it red. And if I extend it, I can see that the extension goes. And I can do it on either end. And you can also move it in or out. And so that's how I can draw the line work for the crosswalk.